Arjuna Uvacha Sannyāsaṁ karmaṇāṁ Krishna punar yogaṁ śaṁsasi etayor ekaṁ tanme brūhi su-niścitam. In this verse, Arjuna is asking Krishna about two ways of living. One is renouncing all actions and living a life of complete detachment, and the other is continuing to act but with a focused mind. Arjuna is confused because Krishna has spoken well of both ways. He wants to know which of these two paths is better for reaching the highest good. Arjuna is asking Krishna to clearly explain which way is the best and why. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyāsaḥ karma-yogaś niḥśreyasa-karāv ubhau tayostu karma-saṁnyāsāt karma-yogo viśiṣyate. In this verse, Krishna replies to Arjuna's question. He says that both paths, renunciation, giving up all actions, and karma-yoga, performing actions with a focus on spirituality, can lead to a good outcome. However, Krishna explains that among these two, karma-yoga is superior. This is because karma-yoga involves performing one's duties without attachment. Sannyāsi yo na dveshti na kaṅkshati nirdvando hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. In this verse, Krishna explains to Arjuna that a true renunciant, someone who has given up attachments, is not someone who simply gives up actions, but one who neither hates nor desires anything. A person who remains calm in both good and bad situations, free from opposites like happiness and sorrow, is called a true renunciant. Krishna tells Arjuna that such a person, free from emotional ups and downs, is easily released from the bondage of life and attains peace. In essence, it's not about giving up work, but about letting go of attachment to outcomes and emotions. Saṅkhya-yogau prithak balav pravadanti na panditaah ekamapyāsthitah samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. In this verse, Krishna explains that only the unwise think the paths of knowledge, that is Sankhya and action yoga, are different. He says that true wise people understand that both paths lead to the same goal. When someone follows either the path of knowledge or the path of action with full commitment, they will achieve the same result: spiritual growth and liberation. Krishna emphasizes that the distinction between the two paths is only seen by those who lack understanding, while the wise recognize that both can lead to the same spiritual destination if followed correctly. Yat sankhait praptaye sthanan tadyogairapi gamyate ekaṁ saṅkhye ca yogaṁ ca yah pashyati sa pashyati. In this verse, Krishna explains that the ultimate goal reached through the path of knowledge is the same as the one reached through the path of action. Both lead to the same destination, spiritual liberation. Krishna says that the person who understands that both paths are not different but lead to the same result truly has wisdom. This means that whether one chooses to focus on knowledge or on action, both will lead to the same spiritual realization if practiced with dedication and the right mindset. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptumayo gatah yogayukto munir brahma nachirenādi-gacchati. In this verse, Krishna tells Arjuna that mere renunciation or giving up actions without practicing yoga, the path of selfless action, is difficult and brings hardship. Simply renouncing actions does not lead to peace or liberation easily. However, one who is engaged in yoga, performing actions without attachment to results, will quickly attain Brahman, the ultimate reality or divine consciousness. Krishna emphasizes that true spiritual progress comes not from abandoning action but from acting with a focused, detached mind. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyah sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvannapi na lipyate. In this verse, Krishna explains that a person who is united with yoga, whose mind is pure, self-controlled, and whose senses are disciplined, is not affected by their actions. Such a person sees the same divine presence in all beings and understands that their own soul is connected to all. even while performing actions, this person remains unaffected as they do not act with selfish desires. Their mind is pure and they can act with a sense of detachment, seeing themselves as part of the whole, and thus their actions do not bind them to worldly consequences. नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित् पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पृशन् जिघ्रन् नशन् गच्छन् स्वपन् श्वसन्. In this verse, Krishna explains the mindset of a wise person who understands the truth of life. Such a person, even while seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, or breathing, thinks, I am not doing anything. This means that a person who is united with yoga and knows the true essence of the soul realizes that it is not the soul but the body and senses performing these actions. This understanding helps them stay detached from their actions and unaffected by their outcomes, living in a state of peace and awareness. Pralapan visujan grannan nunmishan nimishannapi indriyani indriyartheshu vartanta iti dharayan. In this verse, Krishna explains that a wise person, even while talking, releasing things, grasping, opening or closing their eyes, understands that it is the senses interacting with sense objects. The enlightened person knows that all actions are performed by the body and its senses, not by the true self or the soul. By maintaining this understanding, they remain detached from their actions, realizing that their inner self remains unaffected by worldly activities. This allows them to live in peace and freedom without getting bound by their actions. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sapapena padmapatramivambhasa. In this verse, Krishna teaches that a person who performs actions by dedicating them to Brahman, the divine, and giving up attachment to the results is not touched by sin, just like a lotus leaf remains unattached by water. This means that when a person acts without selfish desires and offers their actions to a higher purpose, they remain unaffected by the consequences, whether good